The confessed killer of a Patriot Prayer supporter has been shot dead by police, all as Antifa thugs are being arrested across the nation. In this video, we're going to take a look at the events surrounding the police shooting of one of Antifa's own, how the far left is actually sanctioning the violence, and how police are cracking down against Antifa members like never before all across this country. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. If this is your first time here on this channel, I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so we can all live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel where each and every day we together celebrate the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. But first, before you do anything else, make sure to click on that link below and head on over to my special website for my Patriot Food Supply. As we saw with the whole pandemic insanity, we cannot wait for an emergency to happen before we respond to one. And no one makes preparing for an emergency more ridiculously easy and affordable than our friends at My Patriot Food Supply. Gang, they're simply the best. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage. They include breakfast, lunches, and dinners. And best of all, they got a guarantee policy that's going to absolutely knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on the link below to my special website. You heard that right. $100 off. So don't wait. I got my food supply. Make sure you get yours. Click on that link below or go to preparewithsteve.com and save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, gang, let's dive in here. Amazing, extraordinary developments in the whole situation surrounding the murder. Indeed, Tim Pool, I think, is right in calling it the execution of a Trump supporter, Aaron Danielson. It went by the nickname Jay Bishop in the chaotic streets of Portland. Thousands of patriots came to Portland to stand in the gap. The feckless and failed mayor, who has deliberately abdicated his law enforcement duties over the last several weeks of chaos that has plagued the city, and that stand unfortunately turned deadly over the weekend. Jay Bishop, Patriot Prayer supporter, was gunned down in the streets of Portland. Now, the suspect in the shooting was an Antifa radical by the name of Michael Raynal, and as we reported at the beginning of the week, we now have video of Raynal approaching Jay Bishop, and it appears that he's the one who yells out, "We've got a Trumper over here," and turned and shot Jay Bishop twice at close range. Jay, of course, died shortly thereafter. Raynal's been on the run from police ever since, all week. But just literally hours ago, police tracked down Raynal just outside of Seattle. He was caught running from a car parked in an apartment complex, and he did brandish a gun and open fire on police, and that's, of course, when police returned fire. Raynal was indeed killed in the shootout. He's reported to have died at the scene. Now, as we're gathering more and more information on this fellow Raynal, as RedState.com is reporting, it's becoming rather clear that Raynal was a mentally disturbed individual, to say the least. His family had been estranged from him for several years. His sister described him as having a temper, behaving irrationally, and that his personality, his disposition, simply would not be able to deal with the intense situations surrounding the Antifa and BLM protests and riots in Portland. Raynal actually claimed that he was a security guard for Antifa and BLM protesters. Apparently, you don't need the police, but you do need security. And as it turns out, just hours before the shooting, Raynal gave a rather bizarre interview to Vice News. He admitted to shooting Bishop and stated that he had, quote, no choice. He said, quote, "I felt that my life and other people's lives around me were in danger. I felt that I had no choice but to do what I did. I feel totally justified. Had I not acted, I am confident my friend and I would have been killed because I wasn't just going to stand there and let something happen," close quote. Now, whatever situation he's referring to here seems to be specific to Raynal's own mind. The video that we have of the incident shows nothing of the sort. It's Raynal who actually confronts Bishop. There's no evidence whatsoever that Bishop was armed or put anyone else in danger. So it really does appear that we're seeing some bizarre visions of grandeur on his part as a self-professed security guard of Antifa who is protecting them from the evils of right-wing fascism. Now, I wonder where he got ideas like that. Well, I don't think we have to look too far for that. After news of the killing of Jay Bishop made its way through the pipeline of rioters and protesters in Portland and the woke wasteland of Twitter, we found that such supporters of BLM and Antifa actually celebrated the killing. One BLM activist was quoted as saying, "I just got word that the person who died was a Patriot Prayer Trump person. He was an effing Nazi. Our community held its own and took out the trash. I'm not going to shed any tears over a Nazi." As we talked about in our last video on this, that's about as dehumanizing of rhetoric that you can get. Your political views can now forfeit your life as far as these BLM radicals and Antifa thugs are concerned. I frankly fail to see a whit of difference between what this confessed killer said and what this BLM activist said. And this is precisely why we've been arguing on this channel, indeed for several months, that there is nothing less than civil war-like hostilities bubbling up here to the surface. When one political side says explicitly, openly, that your political views, your activism forfeit your life, that, my friends, is the rhetoric of civil war. Discourse and dialogue are not options. Destruction, disillusion, elimination. That's now the only aim that we have with regard to you and your fascist, racist, bigoted worldview. Again, we've said this over and over again on this channel. This is the danger, what happens when you reinvent ultimate evils like the political left has. Culture anthropologists know it as taboo codes. And I think the best way of thinking about a taboo code is in terms of how it functions very much like an immune system in any given social order. In other words, societies are a lot like biological organisms in that they have immune systems. If a social order is going to survive, it has to maintain an equilibrium between the various institutions and structures and arrangements that comprise the social nexus. If that equilibrium gets disrupted, right, if the social order falls apart or it's in effect replaced with a new one, then all is lost. So what anthropologists have noticed is that what's essential to maintaining the equilibrium of a society is a value system or system of values that function first to define what's considered morally normal and admired and exhorted, and second, conversely, what is morally reprehensible and stigmatized, what's not allowed. And that's how a taboo code functions in society. It functions to protect and preserve the equilibrium, the mutually beneficial interrelationship between the various institutions that together comprise a unique social order. And this, I believe, is how we have to understand the whole notion of what we call political correctness, particularly our obsession over racism and social inequalities. Political correctness is the taboo code of modern liberal globalist society. Political correctness has one job only, and that is to identify threats to a secular left-wing cultural Marxist social order and effectively neutralize those threats by marginalizing them with social stigma labels like you're a racist or a bigot or you're a sexist or you're a homophobe, which would become absolutely the worst possible stigma any person can accrue in a cultural Marxist society. And if one continues to threaten that cultural Marxist society by threatening the immune system of the society, right, by violating continuously politically correct norms, then one is legitimately excommunicated from that society. Excommunicato, you John Wick fans. And that's what we call cancel culture. That's where cancel culture comes in. And excommunicative cancel culture can happen on the internet via big tech, and it can happen in Portland via an Antifa radical. Because that's basically what they did to Jay Bishop. They canceled him. And they canceled him because he was a threat to the politically correct social order that Antifa is supposedly defending. But Antifa is having a harder and harder time doing that. And that's because law enforcement has begun cracking down on them like never before. Now, before we get into that, we cannot thank you enough for all of you who have signed up for a brand new Turley Talks podcast. We are number 23 in the nation of political commentary. And with your support, we're fast making our way to number 1. And so if you own a business and are looking to advertise directly to a huge conservative audience, we have a number of exclusive launch packages for you that you'll put your business front and center before a huge audience of dedicated and loyal conservatives. All you got to do is just click on the link below in the pinned comment section and sign up to get more information on how your business can flourish as a sponsor of our Turley Talks podcast. It'll be an honor and a privilege to work together with you to advance conservative businesses throughout our nation. All right, gang. So while Antifa may think it's the self-anointed guardian of all things woke, law enforcement across the country has something very, very different to say about that. The truth is that Antifa radicals are being arrested everywhere in this massive national crackdown that we're seeing. Now, I'm sure you heard about the Antifa leader known as Commander Red, an extremely violent individual. He's now in police custody. His name is Matthew Banta, and he's been busted carrying a flamethrower to a Wisconsin Black Lives Matter rally. And add insult to injury, I'm sure you heard about this. He's widely reported to have, quote, dropped into the fetal position, began crying when stopped by the police. These are not the most mentally stable people we're dealing with. These appear to be very hysterical, mentally imbalanced people. In Richmond, Virginia, police arrested a dozen Antifa members that were causing damage, vandalizing property during another BLM rally. In the city of Eugene, Oregon, just an hour or so outside of Portland, a number of arrests have been made of violent Antifa thugs who are all part of riots that plagued Eugene several weeks back. And what happened is that after a full investigation, we've actually talked about this, Eugene police have announced the arrests of multiple criminal suspects, according to the investigation by Andy No, who's had a firsthand violent encounter with Antifa thugs in the past. Andy No is saying that Antifa websites have been freaking out and calling for bail donations to help bail out their comrades. They can always call, by the way, they can always call Joe Biden and the Joe Biden campaign, right? His staffers, I'm sure you know. The staffers would love to help, since Reuters pointed out they did bail out many rioters over the past. In Chicago, police absolutely cracked down on protesters big time. Police are claiming that they were attacked recently and that they went into this protest with a zero tolerance policy against attacks against police. They did smash the protests. Actually, their tactics were so rough, with pepper spray, batons, dozens of arrests. It was such a decisive crackdown that protesters were demanding at least an apology from the police, if not a full-blown investigation. And so with the shooting death of a Patriot Prayer supporter, we have certainly seen an escalation in the hostilities. Indeed, the Civil War-like conditions emerging throughout our nation. But then again, with the demise of the Antifa-linked shooter and the mass arrests of Antifa leaders and thugs throughout the nation, it doesn't look like this emerging civil war is likely to go in their favor. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on how we're seeing a massive viewer backlash against woke sports as support for BLM crumbles. You're not going to want to miss this. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.